Can I control my thoughts? There is perhaps no question that reveals the illusion of mental sovereignty, quite like this one. The mind that asks whether it can control thoughts is the same mind that must somehow step outside itself to observe and direct its own functioning. Like trying to lift oneself by pulling on one's own shoelaces. But observe what actually happens when we attempt to control our thinking. Try for the next 30 seconds to not think about a white elephant. Notice what occurs. The very effort to suppress the thought seems to summon it with even greater force. The mind that tries not to think about white elephants finds itself populated with white elephants of various sizes, shapes, and temperaments. This simple experiment reveals something profound about the nature of mental control. The harder we try to direct our thoughts, the more elusive they become. The more we struggle to not think certain things, the more persistent those very thoughts seem to grow. Yet the belief in thought control runs remarkably deep. We imagine that if we could just discipline our minds properly, we could eliminate unwanted thoughts and cultivate only pleasant, productive thinking. Entire industries have emerged around this promise: positive thinking programs, mental training courses, cognitive restructuring techniques. Why? But watch what happens when someone tries to maintain positive thoughts throughout an entire day. The effort becomes exhausting. The mind rebels against the imposed discipline. Negative thoughts seem to multiply in response to the attempt to exclude them. This is not a failure of willpower or technique. This points to something more fundamental about the relationship between awareness and thought. Consider the nature of thoughts themselves. They arise spontaneously, without consultation with our preferences. We do not wake up in the morning and consciously decide, "Today, I will think 60% practical thoughts, 25% emotional thoughts, 10% random thoughts, and 5% creative thoughts." Thinking happens, like breathing happens, like the heart beats, automatically, continuously, beyond conscious direction. The thought "I should control my thoughts" is itself just another thought arising in awareness. Who or what would control this controlling thought? The controller would need another controller, and that controller would need yet another controller, in an infinite regression of imaginary mental management. But this observation does not leave us powerless, or at the mercy of chaotic thinking. Something more subtle and elegant becomes available when we stop trying to control thoughts and begin to understand our relationship to them. Watch thoughts as they arise in consciousness. Notice how they appear uninvited, persist for a while, then dissolve back into the space from which they emerged. Like clouds forming and dispersing in an open sky, thoughts come and go according to their own natural rhythms. The sky is not disturbed by the clouds that pass through it. It neither welcomes pleasant clouds nor resists stormy ones. It remains spacious, open, unaffected by whatever weather patterns arise and subside within it. What if awareness is similar to sky, and thoughts are like clouds? What if the attempt to control thoughts is like sky trying to micromanage every cloud formation? This shift in understanding changes everything. Instead of being a thought controller, we recognize ourselves as the aware space in which thoughts appear. Instead of fighting with mental content, we become curious about the consciousness that observes all mental content. From this perspective, thoughts become neither enemy nor friend, neither problem nor solution. They are simply phenomena arising and dissolving in awareness, like waves on an ocean, or leaves rustling in wind. A disturbing thought appears, and instead of immediately trying to replace it with a positive thought, we simply notice there is a disturbing thought arising. We observe its texture, its emotional coloring, its physical effects on the body. We watch how it peaks and then naturally begins to subside. This is not passive resignation or indifference. This is active awareness, meeting whatever arises with clear, non-resistant attention. Paradoxically, this approach often results in greater mental clarity and peace than any attempt at thought control. When we stop fighting with thoughts, they lose much of their power to disturb us. When we stop trying to manufacture positive thinking, naturally positive states often emerge. The person who understands this relationship to thinking can function effectively in the world without being tormented by their own mental activity. They can acknowledge difficult thoughts without being overwhelmed by them. They can enjoy pleasant thoughts without clinging to them. This is not about becoming thoughtless or mentally vacant. Thinking continues, but the relationship to thinking transforms. Thoughts become tools rather than tyrants, information rather than identity, activity rather than self. Practical thinking, planning, problem-solving, analyzing becomes more efficient when not clouded by the emotional struggle of trying to think correctly. Creative thinking flows more freely when not constrained by the effort to control its direction. But perhaps most significantly, the exhausting project of mental self-management comes to an end. The energy that was spent trying to control thoughts becomes available for actually living. This does not mean we become victims of every passing thought. It means we discover a different kind of freedom, not the freedom to control mental content, but the freedom to remain uncontrolled by mental content. In this freedom, we can respond to thoughts rather than react to them. We can choose which thoughts to engage with and which to allow to pass by. But this choice comes not from forced mental discipline, but from the natural intelligence of clear awareness. The question reveals its own impossibility when examined closely. But in that recognition of impossibility lies a much greater possibility, the discovery of what you actually are in relationship to all thinking. What is this that needs no thought control to be at peace? This awareness that remains undisturbed by any mental weather. This space that accommodates all thoughts without being defined by any of them?